The battlefield was silent after the storm of fire and steel. But the silence was not peace. It was heavy, filled with smoke, dust, and the smell of burned metal. Broken machines lay scattered across the ground like the bones of dead giants. Single human soldier, his armor cracked and burned, dragged himself through the ruins. His name was Captain Raynor. His chest rose and fell slowly, every breath a fight. He had been separated from his unit when the enemy struck. Now he was alone, bleeding, and surrounded by hostile territory. He pushed himself forward, crawling past wreckage. His vision blurred, and his ears rang with the memory of explosions. He did not know if help would ever come. All he knew was that if the enemy patrols found him, his story would end in this wasteland. Raynor collapsed beside a broken metal wall. His strength was gone. His eyes closed, but his mind still fought. Images of Earth, of his family, and of his duty filled him. He whispered, "I can't stop here." But his voice was too weak to travel. From the shadows of the ruins, shapes began to appear. They were not human. Their forms were tall, thin, and cloaked in rough cloth to protect from the dust. Their skin shimmered faintly under the pale light, marked with lines that looked like glowing cracks. These were the Cathari, an alien race known more for their silence than their power. One of them, a female with pale violet skin, stepped closer. She looked at the broken human lying on the ground. Her large eyes blinked with caution. Behind her, another alien whispered sharply in their tongue, warning her not to go near, to touch a human. An enemy was dangerous, but she ignored them. She knelt beside Raynor and touched his wrist, feeling the weak beat of his heart. "He is still alive," she whispered in her language. The others looked around nervously. The empire that ruled over them had strict laws. Helping an enemy was a crime punished by death. The female turned her head. "If we leave him, he will die. If we save him, maybe he will remember." Her words were soft but carried weight. The others argued, fear in their voices, yet her resolve was stronger. She motioned for two of them to help lift the human. Raynor barely felt himself being moved. His vision flickered. He thought he saw faces that were not human, alien eyes, strange glowing patterns on their skin. He tried to speak but only managed a broken word. "Why?" Then darkness took him again. The Cathari carried him through winding paths beneath the ruins, down into a hidden cavern lit with blue crystals. It was their secret shelter, a place where they hid from the Empire's patrols. They laid the human on a rough bed made of woven plant fibers. The alien female who had insisted on saving him began to work quickly. She mixed crushed herbs with water, spreading the paste over his wounds. Her hands shook, not from lack of skill, but from the fear that soldiers might come at any moment. One of the older Cathari hissed at her. "You risk us all, Lyra. Do you not understand what will happen if they find him here?" She looked at the human's face, pale and broken. "I know," she whispered. "But I also know what it means to do nothing. He is alone like us. If we let him die, then we are no better than the empire that crushes us." Hours passed. The human stirred. His breathing grew steadier. His eyes opened again, confused. He saw strange faces leaning over him. He reached for his weapon but found it gone. His voice cracked as he asked, "Where am I?" Lyra placed a hand gently on his chest, pressing him back down. "Safe for now," she said in broken human speech. Her people rarely used the human tongue, but she had learned some words long ago. Raynor blinked at her, trying to focus. "Why? Help me?" His tone was suspicious. Every human knew the Cathari served under the Empire's rule. They were considered untrustworthy. Yet here they were saving him. Lyra looked at him with eyes that held both fear and kindness. "Because once, we wished someone would help us." Her words struck him. His throat tightened. He did not know why, but he believed her. He could see it in her face. This was no trick, no trap. They had saved him, even though it put them in danger. The others in the cavern stayed back, watching. Some whispered angrily that this was madness. Others looked at the human with quiet curiosity. None dared speak too loudly. If the Empire's patrols came and found him here, all of them would be executed. That night, Raynor tried to rest, but sleep brought no peace. He dreamed of his fallen squad, of the chaos of battle, and of the faces of these aliens who had lifted him from death. He woke in the dim glow of the crystals, sweat on his face. He heard soft footsteps and saw Lyra sitting nearby. She noticed his eyes open and spoke quietly. "You are strong, but broken. You need time." Raynor let out a tired laugh that turned into a cough. "Time is something I don't have." He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. He fell back with a groan. Lyra's expression softened. She placed a bowl of warm broth near his lips. "Drink," she said firmly. He hesitated, then obeyed. The taste was strange but calming. His body eased. For a moment, their eyes met in silence. Human and alien, once enemies, now bound by survival. Neither spoke the truth. They both knew that this act of kindness could cost them everything. Outside the cavern, the sound of distant engines echoed. Enemy patrols were sweeping the ruins again. Searching, the Cathari froze. Listening, Lyra looked at the human and whispered, "You must not be found here." Raynor clenched his fists weakly. "If they find you helping me, they'll kill you." She nodded slowly. "We know." Her voice was steady. "But still, we choose to save you." Raynor stared at her, unable to answer. A fire grew inside him, not of anger, but of something deeper, a promise forming in the shadows of his mind. For the first time since the battle, he did not feel alone. He felt a bond. The ruins above groaned like an old beast in its sleep. The night was never silent in this world. Wind howled through broken towers, and the patrols of the Empire prowled like wolves. Beneath it all, in a hidden cavern of blue crystal light, a wounded human breathed softly while aliens watched over him. Captain Raynor stirred from uneasy dreams. His body ached, but the fire of life had returned to his veins. He sat up slowly, leaning on his elbow. Around him, Cathari figures whispered among themselves. Their voices were sharp, edged with fear. One pointed at him with glowing fingers and hissed, "He should not be here. He will bring soldiers to our door." Another snapped back, "Better to leave him in the sand and let him die." Lyra, the one who had saved him, stepped forward. Her violet skin shimmered faintly in the dim glow. Her eyes were firm. "He lives because of us. That cannot change now. He will not betray us." The elder of their group shook his head. His face was lined with cracks of light deeper than the others. "Humans fight the Empire, yes, but they also burn villages when they suspect betrayal. How do we know he will not bring ruin?" Raynor listened silently. He understood little of their language, but he could read their faces. He felt the weight of their fear. They were risking their lives for him. He clenched his fists, shame washing through him. He was their enemy, yet they saved him. When Lyra turned to him, she spoke slowly in broken human speech. "You live, but you bring danger. Do you understand?" Raynor's voice was hoarse, but steady. "I do, and I swear. I will not harm you. I owe you my life." The cavern went silent. The Cathari exchanged uneasy looks. Promises meant little in their world, yet something in his tone, the rawness of it, made even the elder hesitate. Later, Lyra brought him food, strange fruits cut into soft pieces. Raynor tasted them. The flavor was bitter at first, but warmed in his throat. He ate slowly, his eyes never leaving her. "You risk much," he said, his voice low. "Why?" Lyra sat beside him. Her hands folded, her eyes reflected the crystal light. "Because once, long ago, my people screamed for help. No one came. We are slaves to the Empire. Our children grow knowing chains. Her voice faltered. She looked at him again. "We could not let another soul die if we could stop it." Her words sank deep into Raynor's chest. He thought of Earth, of freedom, of his own people who would never accept chains. He felt a deep wound inside that was not from battle. Days passed in the hidden cavern. Raynor's strength slowly returned. His wounds closed under the alien herbs. He learned their names. The elder was Kale, stern but wise. Lyra's younger brother Jaron was restless and suspicious. The others kept their distance, but their eyes always followed him. Raynor began to notice small things. The Cathari lived with very little. Their food was scarce, their clothes worn thin. They shared what little they had with him, though it meant less for themselves. He felt guilt eat at him each time he took their offering. One evening, Lyra sat near him while Jaren sharpened a crude blade of crystal. Raynor asked softly, "Why do you obey the Empire? You are many, they are few. Why not rise?" Jaren's blade stopped, his eyes narrowed. "You do not know our chains." He spat. "Every village that rises burns. Every child that resists is killed. We live because we bow." Lyra's gaze softened. "But maybe one day, if we had allies, things could change." Her eyes flicked to Raynor as she spoke. Her words hung in the air like forbidden fire. That night, the sound of engines roared above. Patrols again. The cavern fell silent. Lights were dimmed. Everyone held their breath. Heavy boots echoed across the ruins. Voices barked orders in the Empire's harsh tongue. Raynor clenched his teeth. Instinct urging him to fight, but his body was too weak. Suddenly, a faint cry echoed from above. A child's scream. Lyra froze, her eyes wide. Without thinking, she dashed toward the tunnel. Jaren grabbed her arm, hissing, "No, it is a trap." But the scream came again. Thin and desperate, Raynor forced himself up, leaning on the wall. "A child," he rasped. His voice cracked but clear. "They have a child." Lyra broke free and ran. Raynor stumbled after her, ignoring the stabbing pain in his ribs. The tunnels opened to the surface, where the night burned red with torches. Empire soldiers dragged a small Cathari child by the arm. The little one's face was streaked with tears. Lyra's body shook with rage. Jaren pulled her back, whispering harshly, "If we fight, we die." Raynor's hand touched the broken wall. His mind raced. He saw one soldier standing apart. Scanning the shadows, his own instincts sharpened. He picked up a shard of metal from the rubble. His muscles screamed, but he moved with a surge of will. He threw the shard. It struck the torch in the soldier's hand. The flame burst against the sand. Darkness swallowed the area for a heartbeat. In that moment, Lyra leaped forward, grabbing the child, pulling him into the shadows. The soldiers shouted. Torches reigniting. They searched, furious, but the shadows of the ruins hid their prey. By the time the light returned, the child was gone. They retreated to the cavern, the child clinging to Lyra's side. The others looked at Raynor with new eyes. Not only had he survived, he had acted for them, risked his life for a Cathari child. Kale, the elder, studied him long. His voice was rough. "Perhaps you are not like the others." Raynor sank to his knees, sweat dripping. His body trembled. But a fire burned in his gaze. "I will not forget what you've done, never." Lyra touched his shoulder gently. "And we will not forget what you risked tonight." From that night forward, the whispers in the cavern changed. Suspicion gave way to something else, fragile trust. Raynor was still human, still enemy, but he was also brother now. A stranger who had tasted their chains and reached for their freedom. And as he lay awake in the dim crystal light, Raynor swore silently, "If I live, I will return, not only for them, but for all who suffer under the Empire." The vow formed in his heart like a blade being forged, and in the shadows of the cavern, bonds stronger than chains began to grow. The cavern's blue crystals flickered faintly, casting long shadows on the walls. The air was heavy with tension, each sound above every engine hum. Every stomp of armored boots sent fear rushing through the Cathari. They had taken a great risk saving Captain Raynor, but now that risk grew larger with each passing night. Raynor's wounds were healing faster than anyone expected. He pushed himself daily, forcing his body to obey. He refused to stay weak. The memory of the child rescued from the Empire's soldiers still burned in his mind. He could not let their kindness end in tragedy. Kale, the elder, spoke sharply one evening. "He cannot stay here." His voice echoed against the cavern walls. "The Empire is searching harder. Their patrols sweep closer every night. It is only a matter of time before they smell his blood. Jaren nodded quickly. I said it from the beginning. This human will bring fire upon us. His eyes narrowed at Raynor. We must give him up before the Empire finds us. Lyra stepped between them, her eyes blazing. No, he is alive because of us. If he is taken now, then our choice means nothing. He saved Kiri. He saved a child of our people. Does that mean nothing to you? The cavern fell silent. The rescued child clung to Lyra's leg. Staring at Raynor with wide, glowing eyes, Raynor's throat tightened. He could not speak their language well, but he understood enough. They were arguing about him. He forced himself to stand, pain stabbing through his side. They're right, he rasped. I can't stay. You've risked too much already. Lyra turned to him, her voice low. Where will you go? Outside is death. The Empire will not stop until they find you. Raynor clenched his fists. Then I'll make them chase me. Not you. Kale's face hardened. Bravery does not hide your trail, human. You will need more than strength to escape. That night, a plan was whispered into being. There were tunnels that stretched beneath the ruins. Old escape routes carved long before the Empire's rise. Few dared to use them now, for they were filled with traps, collapsed paths, and the bones of those who never made it through, but they were the only chance. Raynor insisted he would go alone, but Lyra refused. You do not know the tunnels. Without us you will die before you take 10 steps. Jaren glared, but finally agreed to guide him part of the way. At dawn they prepared. Raynor was given rough clothes of woven fiber to hide the gleam of his armor. Lyra pressed a small pouch of herbs into his hand. For the pain, she said. Her eyes lingered on him longer than words allowed. The child Kiri tried to follow, but Kale pulled him back. No more risks, the elder said. His voice was firm, but his eyes betrayed sorrow. The tunnels were dark and narrow. Raynor ducked low, his hands brushing cold stone. Strange markings glowed faintly on the walls, remnants of the Kithari's ancestors. Lyra walked ahead, her movements sure. Jaren followed at the rear, always watching, always tense. Hours passed. The tunnels twisted like a maze. Sometimes they crawled on hands and knees. Sometimes they waded through waist-high water. The air grew thick, damp and foul. Raynor's body ached, but his spirit burned. Each step forward was a step closer to freedom, and each glance back at Lyra reminded him of the debt he owed. Then came the sound, a distant echo of armored boots. The Empire had found the tunnels. Lyra froze, her eyes wide. Jaren swore under his breath. They are hunting us, he hissed. He shoved Raynor forward. Faster. They ran, the tunnel walls closing around them. The sound of soldiers grew louder. Raynor's heart pounded. He stumbled, pain flaring in his side. But Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. The tunnel split ahead, one path narrow and steep, the other wide but filled with a low hum. Jaren's face went pale. The wide path is trapped. We cannot go there. Raynor clenched his jaw. Then the narrow one. They squeezed through the smaller passage, scraping skin against jagged stone. Behind them, voices shouted. Lights pierced the darkness. Soldiers were close. Suddenly, the tunnel dropped into a deep cavern. A chasm split the floor. A broken bridge of stone stretched across it, crumbling and unstable. Raynor cursed under his breath. We'll never make it across, Jaren snarled. We have no choice. He leapt first. Landing on the cracked stone, the bridge groaned but held. Lyra pushed Raynor forward. Go! Raynor stepped onto the bridge, each stone trembling under his weight. Halfway across, a loud crack split the air. The stone gave way. Raynor slipped, his hands clawing for purchase. Lyra cried out, grabbing his arm. Her grip was strong but trembling. Behind them, soldiers poured into the cavern. Weapons raised. Raynor's eyes met hers, breath ragged. Let me go. Save yourself. Lyra shook her head fiercely. No, not after everything. She pulled with all her strength. Jaren joined, and together they dragged Raynor back up. The soldiers opened fire, beams of burning light slicing across the cavern. One shot struck the bridge, and the stone shattered. The path collapsed, sending rocks crashing into the abyss. The Empire soldiers on the other side cursed. Cut off from their prey, breathing hard, the three of them stumbled into another tunnel. The sound of collapsing stone drowned out the soldiers' shouts. For the moment, they were safe. Hours later, they emerged into the surface far beyond the Empire's patrol lines. The world above was barren, but free of soldiers. Raynor fell to his knees. Exhausted but alive, Jaren dropped beside him, panting. "You should be dead, human. More trouble than you're worth." Yet his voice lacked the hatred it once held. It carried something closer to respect. Lyra knelt beside Raynor, her hand brushing his shoulder. "You live because we chose to believe." Her eyes softened. "Do not waste it." Raynor looked at them both, sweat and blood mixing on his face. His voice was hoarse but steady. "I won't, I swear to you. This debt will not be forgotten." In the distance, the Empire's patrol still searched. But for now, the three fugitives had escaped. The night sky stretched above them, filled with strange stars. Raynor stared at them with fierce determination. For the first time since his fall on the battlefield, he felt something stronger than survival. He felt purpose. The Cathari had given him more than life. They had given him a reason to fight. And as he rose to his feet, battered but unbroken, he whispered the vow that had grown in his chest since the day Lyra first touched his wrist in the ruins. "If I live, I will return." The Empire believed they had hunted a dying soldier through broken tunnels. But in truth, they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had awakened a promise. The war did not end that day in the tunnels. For Captain Raynor, the escape was only the beginning. He carried the memory of the Cathari with him like a fire hidden beneath ashes. He returned to his people broken in body, but unbroken in spirit. Doctors healed his wounds. Commanders questioned his tale. Many refused to believe that the Cathari had saved him. To the human fleet, the Cathari were nothing but slaves of the Empire, weak and unwilling to rise. Raynor did not argue. He kept his secret close. But deep inside, he swore he would repay the debt. Years passed. Raynor climbed in rank, his courage in battle, his sharp mind, and his refusal to abandon allies made him known among the fleets. Soldiers trusted him, officers respected him. Even his enemies began to whisper his name. But every night, when the noise of war faded, his thoughts returned to the cavern of blue crystal, to Lyra's steady eyes, to the child clinging to her leg, and to the promise he made. "If I live, I will return." One evening, years later, Raynor stood on the bridge of a massive human warship. The stars stretched like rivers of light across the void. His fleet had been sent on a mission deep into Empire space. Reports spoke of villages burning, of cries unanswered. The Empire had begun a new campaign of punishment against its own slaves. Raynor's chest tightened when the name of the planet came across his desk. Kether. His eyes froze on the word. He remembered the tunnels, the bridge collapsing. Lyra's hand gripping his arm with unshakable strength. He remembered Kale's stern face, Jaren's restless suspicion, and Kiri's innocent cry. The fleet admiral ordered strict observation. "We cannot interfere in Empire internal matters," the old man declared. "We will monitor, but not involve. We cannot risk open war yet." Raynor's jaw tightened. He saluted but said nothing. Inside, his blood burned. He could not sit and watch while the Empire crushed the very people who had once saved his life. That night, alone in his quarters, he looked at his reflection in the polished steel. His hair was streaked with gray now, his eyes harder, but the fire had not dimmed. He whispered to the empty room, "I owe them, and I will not let them burn." The next morning, he walked into the strategy chamber, his voice steady but filled with quiet force. "Send me. Give me a small detachment. A transport. Let me go down and recon the surface." The admiral shook his head. "Too dangerous. We are not at war here." "Captain, stand down." But Raynor did not stand down. He gathered a group of trusted soldiers. Men and women who had fought beside him for years. They knew his heart. They followed without question when he told them. There are people who once saved me, now it is my turn, none refused. The ship descended into the shadow of Kether. Flames lit the horizon. Villages burned under the Empire's wrath. Patrol ships circled the skies. Raynor's small detachment landed in the dark of night, far from the main roads. As he stepped onto the soil of Kether again, memories rushed back. The same sharp air, the same alien stars. He closed his eyes for a moment and whispered, "I kept my word." They moved carefully through the ruins. Soldiers spread in silence, scouting. Soon they reached a broken settlement. The houses were burned, walls shattered, yet among the ashes there were survivors. Thin and hollow-eyed, Raynor stepped forward. His soldiers aimed their weapons cautiously. The Cathari survivors froze, fear flashing in their glowing eyes. One of them whispered, "Humans." Raynor lowered his weapon. His voice was calm. "We are not your enemies." He searched the faces, his heart pounding, and then he saw her, Lyra, older now. Her violet skin marked with scars. Her eyes were tired but still burned with fire. Beside her stood Kiri, no longer a child but a young man, taller, stronger. His face carried the same glow of youth, but his eyes were hardened by years of suffering. For a moment, none moved. Then Lyra whispered his name, not in her tongue but in human words, Raynor. He felt the years fall away. He saw her as she had been kneeling by his side in the cavern, pulling him from the broken bridge, risking everything for him. His throat tightened. "You remember?" Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "How could I forget?" The survivors murmured in confusion. Some recognized him, others did not. Kiri stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Why are you here? The Empire hunts us, and humans do nothing." His anger cut like a blade. Raynor met his gaze. Steady and unflinching. "You saved me once. Now I have come back, not for one life, but for all of you." The words spread through the survivors like fire. Suspicion battled with hope in their faces. They had been betrayed too many times, abandoned too many times. Yet here stood a human soldier, not with promises of Empire chains, but with soldiers ready to fight beside them. Lyra's eyes softened as she whispered, "I knew you would return." Raynor stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This time, I don't leave until you are free." But above them, the night sky lit with fire. Empire patrols had noticed the human landing. Ships roared overhead, searchlights cutting through the dark. The ground shook with approaching engines. Raynor turned to his soldiers. "Form up, defend the village." His voice was sharp, steady, filled with command. His men moved instantly, setting up defenses, guiding Cathari survivors into cover. The first blast shook the ruins as Empire soldiers stormed into view. Armored and armed with blazing rifles, Raynor raised his weapon, his soldiers by his side. The battle for Kether had begun. Lyra pulled Kiri behind her, her voice firm. "Stay low, fight only when you must." But Kiri's eyes burned with fire. "No, this time we fight with them." Raynor glanced back, his heart pounding as he saw Kiri grab a fallen weapon. The boy who had once clung to Lyra's leg now stood like a warrior. The promise Raynor had carried for years was no longer his alone. It had spread, igniting hearts. The first clash of gunfire echoed across the ruins. Dust filled the air. Soldiers shouted. Raynor fought with a strength born not only of duty but of memory. Every strike, every command was for those who once carried him through tunnels of death. The Empire had power, but the humans had something stronger: loyalty. As the night raged with fire and blood, one truth burned clear. The debt was no longer between one human and one family. It was between two peoples, bound by choice and sacrifice, and Raynor, standing in the heart of it, knew the battle ahead would not be easy, but he would not falter, for he had returned, as promised, and this time he was not leaving without them. The dawn came with fire. The Empire's ships blotted out the rising sun, dark shapes filling the sky. Their engines roared like thunder across the broken land. From the ruins of Kether, humans and Cathari looked up together. Knowing the storm was about to fall, Captain Raynor stood at the center of the makeshift camp, his armor scorched, his blade stained. His men gathered around him, tired but unyielding. Beside them stood the Cathari, no longer hiding in shadows. They held scavenged weapons, their glowing eyes fierce with new purpose. Lyra's voice rang out among her people, strong and clear. "No more chains, no more silence, today we fight." Her words sent a ripple through the Cathari. Once slaves, now warriors. Raynor turned to his soldiers. "This will not be easy, the Empire outnumbers us. But we fight not for orders, we fight for freedom, for every life that deserves more than chains." His voice grew sharper. "We hold the line here, together." The ground trembled as the first wave came. Empire walkers, massive machines with burning cannons, marched across the plains. Behind them, squads of armored soldiers advanced. In disciplined ranks, positions. Raynor shouted. His men took cover behind ruins. Cathari climbed higher ground with rifles and bows, improvised but deadly. The first blasts shook the battlefield. Fire erupted as walls crumbled. The humans answered with disciplined fire, beams of light cut into the advancing soldiers. Explosions lit the walkers as grenades struck weak points. Cathari warriors leaped from the shadows, striking with spears and stolen rifles. Their war cries shook the air. Raynor moved like a storm through the chaos. His blade flashed, his rifle roared. Every step he took pushed the line forward. Kiri fought at his side, reckless but fierce. Lyra commanded her people, her staff striking down enemies with sudden bursts of strength. The Empire fought with overwhelming power, but something was different now. For every Cathari that fell, two rose to take their place. They were no longer slaves waiting for mercy. They were a people who had seen hope. Hours dragged on, the battlefield turned into a sea of smoke and fire. Raynor's men fought with impossible endurance. Their training and spirit matched the Empire's numbers. But then the ground shook again. A new sound rose above the firestorm. From the sky descended the Empire's overlord, a towering figure clad in black armor. His weapon crackled with burning energy. His presence alone sent fear through the Cathari ranks. The soldiers of the Empire roared at his arrival. "The Lord of Chains!" They shouted. His reputation was known across systems. He was the iron fist that had crushed rebellions for decades. Raynor stepped forward, his jaw tight. His soldiers tried to hold him back, but he raised his hand. "This fight is mine." Lyra's voice broke through the roar. "No, you cannot face him alone." Raynor glanced at her, his voice steady. "I swore to protect you, to repay what was given to me. This is how I keep that vow." The Overlord strode forward, his weapon humming with deadly energy. His voice was like thunder. "You dare bring rebellion to my world, human. You will die as they all have died." Raynor raised his blade, his voice cutting the air. "You rule with fear, but fear ends today." The duel began. The Overlord swung with power that split stone. Raynor dodged, his body moving with practiced precision. Each strike he gave back was sharp, each block desperate but strong. The battlefield stilled. Soldiers and rebels alike paused to watch. The clash of two warriors echoed louder than the cannons. Sparks flew as weapons met. Fire lit the sky behind them. The Overlord struck hard, sending Raynor crashing to one knee. The crowd gasped. Lyra cried out, but Raynor's eyes burned. He rose again, blood on his lips. "I don't kneel to tyrants." He surged forward, blade striking with renewed fury. The Overlord staggered as Raynor's strikes grew faster, sharper, fueled not by strength alone but by memory of the cavern, of Lyra's voice, of Kiri's courage, of Kale's warning. The Overlord roared and unleashed a final crushing blow. Raynor caught it with both hands, his blade shuddering under the force. His muscles screamed, but his spirit did not break. With a shout that shook the ruins, he twisted, driving his blade into the Overlord's chest. The black armor cracked. The Overlord stumbled, disbelief in his eyes. "Impossible." Raynor's voice thundered back. Not impossible, human. The overlord collapsed, the ground trembling as his body struck. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then the Cathari roared, their voices shaking the sky. Humans raised their weapons in triumph. The Empire soldiers faltered. Their commander was dead. Their lines broke. Panic spread. The rebels and humans surged forward, striking with new fury. The Empire began to retreat, their machines burning as they fled. Raynor stood over the fallen overlord, his chest heaving, his body broken, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. Lyra rushed to him, her hands trembling as she touched his arm. You did it." Her voice was filled with awe and relief. Raynor gave a tired smile. "No, we did it." He turned to the battlefield, where humans and Cathari fought side by side, their voices rising together. Kiri approached, his weapon still smoking, his eyes shone with fire. "This is only the beginning. We cannot stop now, not until all our people are free." Raynor looked at him, pride swelling in his chest. The boy had become a warrior. The people had become an army. He raised his weapon high, his voice carrying. "Across the ruins, the chains are broken here, but they are not gone. We fight until every world is free, until no child cries in silence again." The Cathari roared in answer. The humans raised their voices. Together, the sound was thunder. The Empire had power, but on this day, a greater power was born. And as the smoke cleared, as the sun rose higher, Captain Raynor knew the promise he once made in the shadows of a cavern had become something far greater. It had become a revolution. The ruins of Kether burned under the Empire's attack. Fire lit the alien sky, and the smell of smoke mixed with the metallic taste of blood. Blaster fire echoed through the broken streets. Captain Raynor stood in the center of chaos, his soldiers forming a shield around the Cathari survivors. "Hold the line," Raynor shouted, his voice cut through the roar of battle. His men answered with steady fire, beams of light streaking into the night. Empire soldiers advanced in waves, their armor gleaming under the flames, but the humans fought like walls of steel. Lyra pulled survivors into cover, her face marked with ash. Kiri, no longer a helpless child, fought beside Raynor's men with fierce determination. His movements were clumsy, but his courage was unshakable. Each shot he fired was for years of chains and silence. Raynor's heart clenched as he saw him. The boy he once knew, who had cried in fear, now stood tall with defiance in his eyes. Raynor felt the weight of his vow. He was not here only to repay kindness. He was here to help this boy, this people, carve their future. The battle raged for hours. The ground shook with explosions. Walls crumbled. Screams of pain filled the air. Yet the humans did not break. Their small detachment fought like a legion. For every human that fell, 3 Empire soldiers went down. But Raynor knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would not stop with one wave. They would send more. They always sent more. As the smoke thinned for a moment, Lyra rushed to Raynor's side. Her violet skin was streaked with soot, her voice urgent. "More patrols are coming. You cannot hold forever." Raynor nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we move. Where are the others?" "The families?" Lyra pointed toward the east. "Some were taken when the Empire raided. They are prisoners now." Her voice broke, but she steadied it. "They will be executed when dawn comes. That is the Empire's way." Raynor's eyes darkened. His soldiers glanced at him, waiting. He raised his weapon and said in a voice that brooked no doubt, "Then we free them before dawn." Kiri stepped forward, fire in his gaze. "I will go too. They took my friends, my people." His voice shook with anger. "I will not hide anymore." Lyra's hand tightened on his arm. "Kiri," but Raynor interrupted, his tone firm. "He fights with us. He has already earned it." They gathered quickly. A strike team of humans and willing Cathari moved into the dark. Slipping through burning ruins, Empire patrols prowled the streets, but Raynor's men knew how to fight in shadows. They silenced enemies with quick strikes. Dragging bodies out of sight, Lyra guided them through back alleys, her memory of the city sharper than any map. At last they reached the prison compound, a square of steel and fire guarded by soldiers. Within, dozens of Cathari huddled in cages. Their glowing eyes filled with despair. Raynor's chest tightened. He remembered lying in the cavern years ago, helpless, saved only by their mercy. Now the roles were reversed. He turned to his soldiers. "We do this fast, no mercy for slavers." Explosions rocked the night as they struck. Human rifles blazed. Cathari rebels shouted war cries long buried. The prison gates fell. Soldiers rushed to defend, but Raynor led the charge. His blade cut through armor. His rifle struck true. His men followed like shadows of vengeance. Kiri fought like a storm, reckless and brave. Lyra stayed close, her staff striking down enemies with fierce precision. The prisoners cried out as the cages shattered. They poured out into the night, clutching freedom for the first time. But the Empire commander appeared, tall in black armor, his voice like thunder. "You dare defy the Empire, human. You bring death to them all." Raynor stepped forward, his soldiers forming a wall behind him. His voice cut the night like steel. "They saved me once. Now I return the favor. You will not take them again." The commander sneered and raised his weapon. The two forces clashed. With fire and fury, the fight was brutal. The commander's strength was monstrous. His strikes shook the ground. But Raynor matched him, each move fueled by memory and promise. He fought not for glory, but for the faces in the cages. For Lyra, for Kiri, for Kale's people. At last with a roar, Raynor drove his blade through the commander's chest. The Empire warrior collapsed, sparks flying from broken armor. The battlefield fell silent for a moment. Then the Cathari prisoners lifted their voices. Cries of freedom echoing across the ruins. It was a sound the Empire had silenced for centuries, but now it rose like thunder. Raynor looked at Lyra. Her eyes glistened with tears. "You came back," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "I told them you would, but none believed me." Raynor placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "I gave my word, and humans keep their word." Kiri stepped close, his chest heaving, his face shone with sweat and fire. "We will fight with you, not just to survive, but to win." Raynor looked at the freed Cathari gathering weapons, raising their heads high. He nodded slowly. "Then we fight together, until every chain is broken." Above them, the night sky burned with enemy ships descending. The Empire was not done. More forces were coming, stronger and faster. But something had changed for the first time. The Cathari did not look at the sky with fear. They looked at it with defiance, with humans. By their side, the impossible no longer seemed unreachable. Raynor turned to his soldiers, his voice clear. "Tonight we hold, tomorrow we rise." The ruins echoed with cheers. Humans and Cathari stood together, battered but unbroken. The Empire had expected submission, but they had awakened rebellion, and in the heart of it all, Captain Raynor knew his promise had grown into something larger. It was no longer only a debt. It was the start of an alliance that could change the galaxy. He lifted his weapon, the firelight gleaming across his scarred face. His voice rang out into the night. "You saved one human, once now humanity comes to save you all." The crowd roared, their voices rising above the flames, and the war for freedom had truly begun. The battlefield was quiet at last. Smoke drifted across the ruins of Kether. The screams and thunder of war had faded, leaving only the sound of wind moving through broken walls. The Empire had retreated, beaten and humiliated. Their overlord lay dead, and their soldiers had fled into the sky. Captain Raynor stood among the wreckage, his body heavy with exhaustion. His armor was cracked, his hands stained with blood, but his spirit burned like fire around him. Humans and Cathari moved among the wounded, tending to the fallen, helping the weak to stand. Lyra walked through the ashes with her staff, her violet skin marked with soot and blood. But her eyes shone with light. She stopped when she reached Raynor. Her voice was soft but strong. "It is over for now." Raynor looked at the horizon, where the Empire ships had vanished into the clouds. "Not over," he said quietly. But today, we showed them something they never believed. Today, we showed them that you will not kneel forever. Kiri came running, his face fierce with triumph. We won, he shouted, his chest heaved, his young hand still clutching a weapon. They will never forget this day. Raynor placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. Yes, but the war is not finished. The Empire will come back, and stronger. The Cathari survivors gathered, their voices murmured in fear and hope. Some had never believed freedom was possible. Others now looked at the humans with awe. The story of one human saved in the shadows had grown into a legend before their eyes. Kale, the elder, leaned on his staff as he stepped forward. His voice was rough but filled with pride. We once hid in caves whispering our fears, but now we stand in the open, shouting our defiance. This change came because of you, human. Raynor shook his head. No, it began because of you. You saved me once when you had nothing to gain. You risked everything for one broken soldier. What you gave me then, I only gave back today. Lyra's eyes glistened with tears. She whispered, we thought you would forget, that you would vanish into the stars and never return. Raynor's gaze was steady, his voice like stone. I gave my word, and humans do not forget their debts. He looked at the crowd of survivors, raising his voice so all could hear. You saved one of us, so we came back to save you all. The words rippled through the Cathari like fire. Cries of hope, shouts of triumph filled the air. It was more than a promise now. It was a bond written in blood and sacrifice. That night, a fire was built in the center of the ruins. Humans and Cathari gathered together, sharing food, telling stories. The survivors sang old songs that had not been sung for generations. Their voices carried into the night, not of sorrow, but of rising strength. Raynor sat near the flames, his soldiers beside him. Lyra sat close, her staff resting by her side. Kiri laughed with other young warriors, his face bright with new purpose. For the first time in years, the people of Cathar felt something unfamiliar: freedom. But Raynor's mind was not at rest. He looked at the stars above, where the Empire still ruled countless worlds. He knew the fight was only beginning. This victory was a spark, but sparks alone could not burn an empire. Lyra noticed the shadow on his face. You are thinking of what comes next, she said softly. Raynor nodded. Yes, the Empire will not ignore this. They will strike harder. Not just here, but everywhere they fear rebellion. His voice tightened. We must be ready. Lyra's eyes softened. Then we will fight. With you, not as slaves, not as survivors, but as allies. Raynor turned to her, his gaze firm. Not just allies, Lyra, but brothers and sisters. From this day forward, we stand as one. The fire crackled between them, and in that moment, the bond of trust forged years ago in a crystal cavern became something unbreakable. At dawn, humans and Cathari marched together, not as rescuer and rescued, but as comrades. They began rebuilding the shattered village, raising walls from ruins, planting banners of defiance against the Empire's sky. Kiri climbed the tallest ruin and planted a broken blade into the stone. The crowd cheered. It was not just a weapon, it was a symbol. The chains were breaking, and the world was watching. Raynor watched them, his heart heavy but proud. He knew the path ahead would be long. He knew there would be more battles, more blood. But he also knew this truth: no empire could stand forever against people who had tasted freedom. He turned to his men, his voice low but certain. This is not the end, it is the beginning. Humanity and Cathari together will rise. And one day, the Empire will fall. The soldiers nodded. Lyra's hand touched his arm, steady and strong. And when that day comes, they will remember that it began here. With you. Raynor shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. Not with me, with us, with all of us. The sun rose higher, spilling gold across the ruins. The light touched the faces of humans and Cathari alike, tired but unbroken. And in that light, a new future began. For once, long ago, one alien woman had chosen mercy over fear. She had saved a dying human soldier, and now, because of that choice, Because of that spark, two people stood together ready to change the galaxy. Raynor looked at Lyra, at Kiri, at the people gathering with hope in their eyes. And he whispered to himself, "Debt repaid, promise kept." The war was far from over, but the chains had cracked and freedom had found its first breath. And from this day onward, the Empire would never sleep easy again.